It was just a family photo in front of their ranch. When experts zoom in, they are speechless. Dr. Maya Richardson had dedicated 15 years to documenting black homesteaders in the American West, a chapter of history often erased from textbooks. Her office at the Oklahoma Historical Museum was lined with photographs, land deeds, and testimonies that painted a fuller picture of frontier life, one that included the thousands of black families who carved out freedom on the plains. The cardboard box arrived on a humid Tuesday morning in June, shipped from an estate sale in Tulsa. Inside, wrapped in yellow tissue paper, were dozens of photographs from the late 1800s. Maya handled each one carefully, her trained eye cataloguing clothing styles, photographic techniques, and background elements that could help establish dates and locations. Halfway through the collection, she stopped. The photograph showed a black family of 5, standing in front of a substantial wooden ranch house. The image quality was remarkable for its era, sharp, well composed, clearly taken by a skilled photographer. The father stood tall on the left, one hand resting on a wooden post. The mother, wearing a neatly pressed dress, held an infant. 2 other children, a boy and a girl, stood beside their parents. Their expressions were serious and formal, as was customary for photographs of that time. But it was the ranch house itself that caught Maya's attention. The structure was impressive, 2 stories, with a wide covered porch and solid construction that spoke of prosperity and permanence. In 1890, for a black family to own such property was extraordinary. This was just 25 years after abolition, during a period when black landowners faced violence, legal sabotage, and deliberate attempts to strip them of their property. Maya turned the photograph over. On the back, in faded pencil, someone had written, "The Williams family, our land, our freedom, 1890. She studied the image again. The clothing was simple but well maintained. The children stood close to their parents, suggesting a tightly bonded household. The father's posture conveyed dignity and defiance, a man who fought for everything he possessed. Maya reached for her magnifying glass, beginning her usual preliminary examination. She scanned the faces first, then the background, the ranch's construction, the landscape, the tools resting on the porch. Then she saw it. Carved into the wooden post beside the father's hand was a symbol, small, nearly invisible to the naked eye, but unmistakable under magnification. Geometric patterns, intentional and precise, distinctly African. Maya's hands trembled as she adjusted the lens. The symbol wasn't accidental. It wasn't weathering or tool marks. It was deliberately carved, a heart shape intersected by straight lines. Her mind flipped through years of research. Then it clicked. Sankofa, an Adinkra symbol from the Akan people of Ghana, learning from the Ai, past to move forward. If one symbol was present, there might be others. Maya scanned the photograph into the museum's high-resolution system and waited as the machine extracted details invisible to the naked eye. Once complete, the image on her monitor revealed more than she expected: individual wood grains, threads in clothing, and carvings hidden in the ranch's beams. She zoomed in. There were more symbols on each porch post, some faint, weathered, nearly erased, but present. Guy Nyame, except for God, I fear none. Dweneman, the ram's horns, representing strength and humility. Funtun Funafu, Denkiam Funafu, the Siamese crocodiles, symbolizing unity and democracy. This can't be coincidence, Maya whispered. On the horizontal beams, she noticed interlocking diamonds resembling Congo cosmograms. The fence posts bore carved linear patterns, decorative at a glance, but layered with meaning. She immediately called Dr. James Okoye, a Howard University expert in African cultural retention. "I'm looking at an 1890 photograph of black homesteaders in Oklahoma," she said. "Their ranch house is covered in Adinkra symbols, possibly Congo cosmograms." There was a long silence then. Maya. That would have been dangerous, risking their lives to preserve culture. She sent the scans. 3 days later, James arrived, carrying books and notes. They examined the images together, zooming into each symbol. With every discovery, his excitement grew. "These symbols aren't random," James said. "This is a narrative, a declaration, a reclamation." He pointed at Sankofa. "Look back to move forward." For a formerly enslaved family to carve this in 1890, it was resistance, Maya said. "And preservation," James added. "The Gai and Yam symbols literally support the roof. They built this home on faith and heritage." He zoomed to the fence. "These are Congo cosmograms. Birth, maturity, death, rebirth, the cycle of life. This family carried ancestral knowledge through slavery, the Middle Passage, generations of erasure, and they kept it alive." Maya held up the original photograph. "Our land, our freedom." "They didn't just mean ownership," James said. "They meant cultural freedom, spiritual freedom, the right to remain African in America." They sat in reverent silence. "We need to find out who they were," Maya finally said. "We need to tell their story." At the Oklahoma Land Records Office, ledgers replaced gold in the bank vaults where archives were kept. Maya and James arrived with the only clues they had. Williams family, Oklahoma Territory, 1890. The clerk, Carol Jenkins, listened with fascination. "Most people don't know this," she said, pulling oversized leather-bound ledgers from the vault. But Oklahoma had one of the largest populations of black landowners after the Civil War. Entire towns, entire communities. She placed the heavy books on the table. "If the Williams family existed, they'll be in here somewhere. If the Williams family filed a legal claim, there should be documentation." The search was difficult. Many black families had their land stolen through violence or legal manipulation. Papers lost, removed, or never filed at all. Others avoided official registration out of fear, knowing that visibility could mean becoming a target. After 2 hours of searching, James found something that made him stop. "Maya, look at this." The record, dated March 1889, showed a land patent issued to Samuel Williams, freedman, for 160 acres in what was then unassigned land, territory that would later become part of Oklahoma. The location was recorded as Township 12, North, Range 4 West, land that would eventually lie in Logan County. 160 acres, Maya breathed, a full homestead claim. Carol, the clerk, pulled more documents from the archives. "Here's the filing. Samuel Williams registered his claim during the land run of 1889. But look at this notation. Prior improvement claimed. That means he argued he was already living there and working the land before the official opening." "Was that common?" James asked. "For white settlers, yes," Carol replied. "For black settlers, incredibly risky. Claiming prior occupation could be seen as squatting, which could cost you the land entirely. But some took the risk. The alternative was being pushed to inferior soil, or no land at all." Maya studied the file. "Is there anything here about where he came from before Oklahoma?" Carol searched supplementary files. "Sometimes affidavits include family details. Let me check." She returned with a thin folder of handwritten papers. Inside was an affidavit, dated April 1889. Samuel Williams's sworn statement. Maya read aloud. "I, Samuel Williams, age 29, formerly of Mississippi, do hereby swear that I have occupied and improved the described property since November 1888, constructing dwelling and outbuildings, clearing land, and establishing crops. I claim this land as my right as a freedman, seeking to establish my family's future." James nodded slowly. "Mississippi, that matters. After the war, Mississippi was one of the hardest places for freedmen to survive. Escaping required planning, money, and unimaginable courage." Maya photographed everything. "We need to know who he was before this. If he preserved African symbols and knowledge this deeply, someone passed it to him. His parents, maybe even grandparents. The Mississippi records. 2 weeks later, the Mississippi Department of Archives and History sent a set of digitized plantation ledgers, Freedmen's Bureau entries, and county tax documents. Maya and James spread the files across multiple monitors, reconstructing Samuel's early life piece by piece. The earliest appearance was in 1865. Freedmen's Bureau, Adams County, Mississippi. Samuel Williams, approximately age 5. Mother, Abigail Williams, about 30. Father, deceased, formerly enslaved on Thornton Plantation. He was 5 when slavery ended, Maya whispered. His childhood was spent in bondage. James opened another record. Here, Thornton Plantation Inventory, 1864. Abigail, 25. Son Samuel, age 4. But another entry made both of them fall silent. Plantation Records, 1862. Abigail's husband, Joseph, was sold to a Louisiana plantation for conducting unauthorized religious gathering using African words and heathen symbols. Overseers feared he would contaminate other enslaved people. Maya stared at the screen, throat tight. He was practicing African traditions, and they punished him for preserving them. James found one more record, a testimony Abigail gave to the Freedmen's Bureau in 1865. She stated her husband taught her and Samuel the old ways, the ways of our ancestors, and that it was their duty to remember and pass them forward. The pieces connected. Samuel learned these symbols not from books, not later in life, but from his family, passed orally through enslavement, kept alive by resistance. We need to go further back, Maya said. How did Joseph know? They searched ship manifests, sale records, estate inventories. Most documents listed enslaved people only by age or first name, history erased by design. Then Maya found it. 1833, Natchez, Mississippi. Estate sale. Among the property, one Negro woman called Zara, origin Gold Coast, one child Joseph, age about 3. James swallowed hard. The Gold Coast is modern-day Ghana, home of the Akan, birthplace of Adinkra symbolism. Maya leaned back, overwhelmed. Zara carried it across the middle passage. She taught Joseph. Joseph taught Samuel. Samuel carved it into his home in Oklahoma Territory, where it survived unseen for over a century. History hadn't vanished. It had endured. The land, the science, the farming. When agricultural historian Dr. Patricia Nkrumah arrived at the museum, Maya and James showed her not only the photos, but survey maps of the Williams homestead. Patricia didn't look first at the symbols. She studied the background of the photo, the fields, the crop lines, the faint irrigation channels. This, she said softly, is not 19th century American farming. She opened comparison images on her laptop, traditional West African intercropping layouts, alternating rows of crops, irrigation systems engineered for water retention in unpredictable climates. This is Akan farming science, she confirmed. Tall, nitrogen-fixing plants providing shade for moisture-sensitive crops. Irrigation canals that protect soil from drought. In 1890, Oklahoma, most white farmers prayed for rain. Samuel engineered water. Maya's pulse raced. He wasn't just preserving heritage, he was using African agricultural technology to thrive. And thriving black farmers, Patricia added, would have drawn resentment, even hostility. A successful black homestead surrounded by failing white farms, that was dangerous. Carol had mentioned something earlier, something that now sat heavier with new meaning. The Williams property faced multiple legal challenges between 1890 and 1895. White neighbors claimed the boundaries were wrong, that Samuel's claim was invalid, that he must have used illegal methods to achieve such productivity. They couldn't understand how he was succeeding, James said, so they assumed he must be cheating. Patricia nodded grimly. It was a pattern repeated throughout the South and West. Black farmers with superior knowledge and techniques faced constant accusations of theft, fraud, even witchcraft. Their success threatened the narrative that white farmers were inherently superior. She turned back to the photograph, studying the ranch house. The fact that he built this structure, a permanent home carved with symbols, suggests he believed he could defend his land, that he had the resources and support to withstand challenges. Did he? Maya asked quietly. Did he manage to keep the land? Patricia's expression darkened. That's what we need to find out. Because in Oklahoma Territory in the 1890, black landowners faced increasing violence and legal theft. The question isn't whether Samuel Williams faced threats, it's whether he survived them. Maya began searching newspapers from the 1890, particularly black-owned papers serving Oklahoma's African-American communities, publications often ignored or distorted by mainstream historians. In the archives of the Langston City Herald, she found a mention of Samuel Williams in an 1891 edition. The article, titled "Successful Farmers of the Territory," profiled black landowners who had built thriving homesteads. Samuel's entry read, "Mr. Samuel Williams of Logan County has developed one of the most productive farms in the territory through innovative agricultural methods. His 160 acres yield crops superior to those of neighboring farms twice the size. Mr. Williams attributes his success to the wisdom of his ancestors and maintains that traditional knowledge, properly applied, can overcome even difficult soil conditions. He and his family are respected members of the community, and his counsel is frequently sought by other settlers." The wisdom of his ancestors, James repeated softly. He wasn't hiding his use of African knowledge. More references followed. In 1892, Samuel donated crops to support a neighboring family whose harvest had failed. In 1893, he helped found a mutual aid society defending black homesteaders from fraudulent claims. But a small notice from 1894 chilled Maya. Threats against colored farmers. Anonymous letters warned black landowners to abandon their claims or face consequences. Samuel Williams was named among the primary targets. White settlers, the Bay, article said, have taken umbrage at the success of Negro farmers. Baseless accusations of unnatural methods appeared designed to justify violence and theft. A follow-up article 2 months later reported a suspicious fire that destroyed one of Samuel's buildings. But still, his family refused to leave. Samuel declared publicly, "This land is ours by law and by right. We will not be moved by threats from those who cannot accept our success." Patricia soon uncovered more. Records from a regional farmers' cooperative operating 1892-1895. Samuel had been teaching others his methods. He belonged to a group of black farmers sharing knowledge, the Heritage Farmers Association, dedicated to preserving African agricultural practices. 15 names filled the membership list, each marked with a specialty: water management, soil conservation, crop rotation, seed saving. They weren't just succeeding individually, Maya realized. They were succeeding together. And that, James said quietly, made them an even bigger target. The next answers came from an unexpected source: letters donated to the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. Correspondence between two black newspapers described the Logan County situation of 1895, a coordinated campaign of violence against successful black landowners. One letter explained, "The heritage farmers have become targets of organized hatred. White settlers, frustrated by their own failures and unwilling to learn from their Negro neighbors, have formed vigilante groups. They claim these farmers use devil worship and African witchcraft, a transparent excuse for jealousy and greed. Families were driven off, homes burned, animals slaughtered, wells poisoned. Samuel Williams' name appeared again, his barn burned, harvest destroyed, yet he remained, trusting the carved symbols as protection. Did they protect him? The next letter held the answer. The Williams family has vanished. Their ranch house stands empty, doors open, possessions left behind. No bodies, no trace. The sheriff, sympathetic to the white settlers, has begun proceedings to declare the land forfeit. Patricia whispered, "That was the pattern. Drive them out, claim they left voluntarily, then take the land and erase the record." "But the photograph survived," James said. "Samuel made sure of that." Maya stared at Samuel's face again, knowing now he had posed fully aware of danger. He carved symbols, preserved his image, left proof for those who would one day search for what was taken. "We have to find out what really happened," Maya said, "to them and to the others." Patricia had already uncovered the aftermath. Of the 15 heritage farmers' families, 13 abandoned their land by 1897, all transferred to white ownership within 2 years. Of the remaining 2, one reached Kansas under a new name. The other was likely the unnamed family found murdered in 1896. The room fell silent. These weren't just documents. They were evidence of violence, theft, erasure. "But not completely forgotten," Maya said softly. "Samuel made sure we would remember." Then, a breakthrough. An email from a woman named Lisa Thompson. She had seen Maya's inquiry online. "I believe Samuel Williams was my great-great-grandfather. My grandmother told stories about land stolen in Oklahoma, about fleeing in the night, about symbols and traditions kept secret. I never knew if they were true. Then I saw your photograph." Maya called her immediately. Lisa lived in Chicago, where her family had resettled in the early 1900s. A social worker in her 50s, she had spent years trying to piece together her family history from fragments of memory and incomplete records. "My great-grandfather was Samuel Williams' youngest son, born on that Oklahoma ranch in 1892, she explained. "His name was Daniel. He was only 3 when they fled. He remembered the house, the wood carvings, the symbols, his mother teaching him about their ancestors. But he also remembered fire, men on horseback, running in the dark." She flew to Oklahoma the following week, carrying family artifacts. A worn Bible with births recorded in fading ink, a small wooden carving Daniel had made as an old man, while trying to recreate the symbols from his childhood, and photos taken later in Chicago. When she finally stood before the original 1890 photograph in person, she wept. "That's them," she whispered, touching the glass. "My grandmother had a copy once, but it was mostly ghost. Here I can see his eyes." Maya gave her time before asking gently, "What did your family say happened? Why they left?" Lisa took a steady breath. "White settlers wanted their land. They tried everything: lawsuits, threats, violence. Samuel believed the law would protect them, that success would speak for itself. But in the fall of 1895, men came in the night. They set fire to the fields. Samuel realized staying meant death. So they ran. They took Daniel and his sister Ruth, left everything behind, traveled only at night, first St. Louis, then Chicago. Samuel took work in the stockyards. He died in 1911, only 41, from workplace injuries, but not before he taught Daniel everything: the symbols, their meanings, their history stretching from the Gold Coast to Mississippi to Oklahoma. Lisa opened a small box. Inside lay Daniel's carving, 6 inches of wood, engraved with Adinkra symbols. He made this in 1950. He wasn't sure he remembered every symbol perfectly, but he remembered what they meant. Sankofa, return and get it. Gyenyame, accept God. Dwenemen, humility and strength. Patricia held the carving next to the photograph. The accuracy stunned her. "He remembered," she said softly. "Your family carried this knowledge forward." Lisa nodded. "Every generation. My grandmother taught me. I taught my children. We may not have the land Samuel built, but we still have what he meant to protect: identity, heritage, connection. Those symbols say, we are still here. They couldn't erase us. Maya felt tears gather. He was right. You're here, and now everyone will know. 6 months later, the exhibition Heritage Carved in Wood, the Williams Family, and African Cultural Resistance on the American Frontier opened at the Oklahoma Historical Museum. Crowds wrapped around the block. At its center glowed the restored 1890 photograph, magnified and interactive, every symbol and grain of carved wood visible. Surrounding it were documents tracing the lineage across 3 generations. Zara, who survived the Middle Passage from the Gold Coast. Joseph, who kept knowledge alive through slavery. Samuel, who carved it into a frontier home. Lisa stood with her children and grandchildren beside the digital display, showing how Samuel's African agricultural techniques produced yields white farmers could never replicate. Maya explained that the land was declared abandoned in 1896 and claimed by a white settler, who produced a fraction of Samuel's harvest and sold it within 4 years. They stole the land, James said, but not the knowledge. That left with the Williams family, and survived. One of Lisa's daughters, now a graduate student in African American studies, spoke next. My family's history proves African agricultural knowledge wasn't lost. It was used, adapted, applied. Samuel wasn't recreating Africa. He was proving Africa had always belonged in the story of America. The exhibition expanded to include the other 15 families of the Heritage Farmers Association. Descendants of 7 were located and their histories displayed, each following the same pattern: brilliance, terror, theft, survival. A replica porch from the Williams Ranch was carved and installed, Adinkra symbols restored. Visitors touched the wood and felt history under their palms. Not abstract art, but identity turned into architecture, a shield against erasure. The exhibit's final wall held 5 photographs: Samuel, 1890, Daniel, 1950, Lisa's mother, 1970, Lisa and her children, 2000, Lisa's grandchildren, today. In each picture, someone held Daniel's carved wood. Heritage passed from hand to hand, unbroken. They wanted us forgotten, Lisa said in her closing speech. But Samuel carved our memory into wood. He knew one day someone would look closely enough to see. And today, the world sees. We return to him, and we rise with him. Applause swept the room. Lisa's grandchildren stood taller, rooted in history, certain of who they were. Samuel Williams lost his land, but not his legacy. His symbols bridged centuries. His family came back for what was theirs, and this time it could not be taken.